Hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Voice of Mississauga. I'm Savita Ramapriyan and I have Avinash here along with me. So we are going to discuss today about more about the neurodivergent and the inclusivity of neurodivergent kids. So let's get started.
Thank you. Thanks, Savita. Great to be here. Our first episode was a great success, and we just thought to record a second one and elaborate more a little bit on the topic of inclusivity. This is a topic that's especially close to us, especially because being neurodivergent parents, there's a high possibility of our children also being neurodivergent. And I have personally experienced bullying when I was a child. I had nowhere to go. I think it is really necessary because we need to make our spaces more inclusive for our children so that it's much more safer for them than it already is.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, what Avinash is talking about, I am a parent of a neurodivergent kid. So inclusivity is something which I am still fighting with the society, with the school system, with everyone, I would say, because the reason being people are still not being educated about the neurodivergence, how to deal with these kind of kids and how to be inclusive. And inclusive, Avinash, means it's not just knowing about the neurodivergence. It's about how do you make them inclusive of a group? Like you are having a group play, there's a neurodivergent kid. Now they don't know how to indulge in that group play. Now, if your kids are not aware of it, of how to, get these kids to be inclusive, where is the inclusivity happening here?
Absolutely right. You brought up a great topic, and it makes a lot of sense to start with what does inclusivity actually mean? We see so many boards around us, so many initiatives around us say, let's make it an inclusive space, let's make it a safe space. But what does that let's make it an inclusive space. Let's make it a safe space. But what does that mean exactly? What does that inclusivity look like as a parent and as a child? Right. So we're going to be exploring this topic in a little more detail this week. So glad you took the time to join us. Stay tuned for really amazing stuff coming up. Okay, let's get started. The word inclusivity. Now, in its broadest sense, inclusivity, yes, are children inclusive most of the time? Yes, because I see my son is neurodivergent too. In school, is he included when other kids are playing? Yes, of course he is. But does that mean that there is an inclusive atmosphere all the time? No. Right. So I just wanted to bring out that point here, that simply including people, including kids in games and including kids with other activities, it doesn't stop at that. It's much more nuanced, and there's a lot more that happens. Right. So if you permit me, I'll just continue a little more. You know, kids with ADHD or kids with autism, generally they get the feedback that, oh, you're too much, or they are continuously, they're playing, and after a few minutes into the play, they get told that we can't handle you, just go sit to the side. So is it inclusive or is it not inclusive? Because the child is playing with them, but he's asked to being sit because he's too much or too loud or too intense with things.
That's a very good topic which you brought up, Avinash. Is this is something which I have also noticed when I take my daughter to a play date or a party or any social setting. I do see that it's just that inclusion happens in a very small way, and I wouldn't even call that as an inclusion, because just by saying, hey, come play with us, doesn't mean inclusion. Inclusion is maybe ask the kid what the kids want to play, trying to be part of that kid's life as well. So that is what an inclusion means. And that is lacking in this society, very much lacking in this society, because a lot of people don't even know what a neurodivergence is. And when I say neurodivergent, again, Avinash, it's what does divergent means. Divergent is not one single thing, it's diverse, right? So that is where the problem comes in, because you don't have a script or anything for each kid, right? Each kid is different, even if whether it's neurodivergent or not, kids are different. They have their unique skills. They have their unique set of ideas, unique set of play or whatever, right? So what I'm trying to say over here is, especially with neurodivergent, there are certain challenges which they have. If the society is not educated about those challenges, they cannot be inclusion at all. You might say we are very inclusive society, but that's just words. I don't see that in action, because based on my experience and of course Avinash, your experience as well, we are not seeing that inclusion happening, be it in a society, be it in an education system. Yes, education system has certain part of inclusion, but it's again in paper. We don't see that happening, and we still feel that these kids are being, how do I say, neurotypical, whatever. They've just been separated from the society. That is what we are trying to, educate people with these podcasts and these episodes, to let them know that the world is big. You have all kind of kids. Let's be inclusive. Inclusive as in, let them all be part of the society, and we should not have the difference between each kid at all. And that is what I am actually advocating, and we both are advocating for the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. So, Savita, I have a question that came to mind as you were speaking. Do you think the parents of kids, all parents of kids, need to have a very strong reason as to why they should teach their children to be inclusive of all children?
That's a very good question, and very good analogy. I would say, Avinash, is these are life skills, right? It's even though you're not neurodivergent or your kid is not neurodivergent, these life skill has to be there with all kids, because you're going to be in a society, and these are morals which we need to inculcate in our kids as well, right? Today I have a neurodivergent kid, you have a neurodivergent kid, we are fighting, but that doesn't stop us from advocating for the other kids as well. We are okay to advocate for the other kids, but we want to make sure that first, inclusive only happens if you're educated. The problem is there's not much of education at all. So the inclusion is not going to happen. It's not going to be achieved until it's been educated. So, this is something I would like to touch upon, Avinash, is that you say Autism Month is April. I understand there might be some reason. Again, this is a very interesting fact which I tried to research on, saying why are they saying April is an Autism Month? So I just realized, and it's just that April is the beginning of spring, something new, something growing, right? So I realized the reason why they have made this as a Autism Month is it's like a new beginning. Now, stop being typical, stop showing the typical behavior of, these kids have to be separate, we have to be separate. That's the reason why they have made April as Autism Month. And in fact, I feel a lot of people don't even know why April is Autism Month. And I would like to tell my audience today, this is the reason why April is an Autism Month, because people want this change. It's a new beginning. It's starting to, how do I say it? It's a way of accepting things. So that's the reason April is an Autism Month, and that is what they're trying to put a message to the world, saying that, guys, let's be inclusive.
Understand. So you made a really interesting point when you said that it's a skill-based thing, right? So the way I see it, our children learn a lot of things in school, and there are some things in school that they don't learn. Right, so it's a very interesting perspective when you say that inclusivity, being inclusive, saying in things that are inclusive to their kid, to their friends, and actually doing things that demonstrate inclusivity to their friends is a skill that all kids can learn. If you take out all other meanings from it, then it becomes actually quite an interesting thing to do, where this is like any other skill, like it's how to make a painting, or how to do photography, or how to learn a sport. It's the same skills that apply to learn the new skill.
Yeah.
Right. That's a very interesting perspective that you brought in. And it honestly, when we look at it as something that is learnable, as a skill, something that can be done, it takes the pressure off. It somehow feels lighter, that oh my god, this thing, inclusivity, that I have to do is now okay. Let me learn how to do it. Right? It's a much more simpler way to do it. So great that you brought that up.
Yeah. I mean, Avinash, what I would just try to say is people use certain words like being inclusive or being accommodative, accessibility. All these words are there, but it will only give meaning when you actually try to incorporate it in your life. So that's what I'm just trying to say, that all these words are there, but whether it's happening in real, that is where the problem is. And the reason why it's not happening in real is the education part of it.
Right. Yes, education. You brought up a couple of things previously as well. You brought up definitely education is what can be done differently in schools. You also touched upon a little bit about how spring is symbolic of autism, right? Can you just elaborate a little bit on that, or do we need to find out what exactly is the connection between spring and autism?
Okay, so basically what I did, this is based on the research, what I did as a parent of a neurodivergent, saying that, I mean, why do you dedicate a particular month to autism wherein you need to have this knowledge throughout the year? Why only April? So I believe, I'm not sure of the exact, the details of that person who had dedicated April as an autism month. He's one of the scientists, and I believe it was his son's birthday, and his son was also neurodivergent, and that's why April was. But the other part of this thing was, you have these different weather, right? But April is kind of, for anyone in general, it's kind of a new beginning for us, saying that, we have been through this winter months, and, the part where we couldn't go out, we couldn't do stuff. But April is like, oh, it's new challenges, new beginning. We can go out, we can have fun, we can have fresh air. So all these things. So this is a way of saying that, all these while we were thinking about, we were neurotypical, right? We were only thinking there's only, normal kids and autistic kids. There was nothing like, there was nothing like in between where we tried to bridge the gap. There was a gap. There was no bridge to, kind of bridge that to normal to autistic kid, right? So this is a way of saying that, hey, you got to change your mindset.
Understand.
So it's like, it's a new beginning for yourself as a person, saying that now it's time for you not to differentiate people, be inclusive of them, whether they have autism, whether they have other physical disability also. I mean, I'm not just saying only autism, but I'm just saying any physical. You're just trying to say that just because that person has an issue doesn't mean he is not a normal person. He's still a normal person with a different thing, right?
Right.
So that is what you're trying to, that is what the scientist was trying to say, that, let's start getting educated on this. Let's start, being inclusive of such kind of kid and getting more knowledge on this as well.
And
That's also important. So I believe this is what I researched about.
great. That's great research. So what you said, it actually prompted me to think of something that might be a little contrarian to what we have been speaking so far and for so long. So I feel another different perspective is the moment you say that this particular month is for autism, right? There is exclusivity right there. Not inclusivity. There is exclusivity right there.
Time.
What about the rest of the 11 months, right?
Yeah.
Are people neurotypical for only 1 month of the year? No, that doesn't happen. Anyway, so it's not to challenge what you've brought up. It's just a slightly different perspective on where we might want to make a few, foundational changes in the way we approach this.
Yes.
As a neurodivergent person myself, I have learned to accept people the way they are. Right. So there might be somebody who has to lock the door and then check it 7 times, precisely 7 times.
Yeah.
Earlier, I would go crazy when I would see something like that, but now I don't. I accept it because I see it as their way of their brain taking care of themselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they need it. So that's why they do it. In the same way, I've started to see, I don't drink alcohol at all, but I've started to see people that consume a lot of alcohol. That's the way that they take care of themselves. And there's no judgment or there's nothing attached to that. However, this level of inclusivity, I call this inclusivity, acceptance of how people are.
Yeah.
This level of inclusivity has happened at my age with a lot of experience and a lot of good and bad things happened in my life, right? So that's why I'm able to see it this way. When it comes to kids, however, I see that kids that are exclusive by nature, and I mean that in the gentlest possible way, kids that don't include neurodivergent kids in their play and in their life, these kids are not learning things from their homes, right? So I feel it's somewhere the job, it starts with the parents, right?
Yes.
In the same way that if a parent took a neurotypical kid into a gathering of an autistic or an ADHD related gathering for kids, and these ADHD and autistic kids told this neurotypical kid to get out, being exclusive there,
Yeah.
then they need to understand how neurodivergent kids feel most of the other times as well.
Yes.
Right? So I think that's where this inclusivity could start. It should definitely start with the parents. However, you have spoken a lot about involving the school board, especially the Peel District School Board, and working with schools, and you have some experience around that. What do you have to say about where we can start this?
So that's a very good point, Avinash. See, the thing is, there are a lot of things available in the school system, in the education system for neurodivergent kids. But the problem here again lies with, as you rightly pointed out, that educating kids about the neurodivergence. So I do understand. I second you with the fact of that April being Autism Month. So what's happening? I mean, this is a small what I did, an exercise what I did, where I was just asking a couple of kids, a couple of my daughter's friends, saying that what autism is. All they know is about my other daughter who is autistic. They only know about that. They don't know per se what autism means. See, these are jargon words for the kids, right? So there has to be a way you educate these kids, like a part of an education itself, where you probably have, one, either a particular subject dedicated, or where it can be subject not just to neurodivergent. You can have a subject where you're trying to include all kind of that inclusivity itself as a subject in the school system, where you're just educating the kids in the right way for their age. I mean, I wouldn't say grade 1, grade 2 people, you go and tell them about autism, they're like, what is this word?
Yeah.
It's so difficult to even pronounce.
Yeah.
Because they don't know. But if you tell them exactly about what it is, rather than just using the word autism, they may be able to understand. See, autism or ADHD, these are jargon words for people, right? So you need to have a better way of communicating. Make it because I have seen with the school, with my daughter's school, I've seen that they have these, Earth Day or whatever those days where they're actually taking them to plant, to clean the park, the cleaning park campaign or whatever, right? These are there. Why don't you have one of these as one day where you're, probably, getting the kids to actually explore of, how to handle neurodivergent. I'm not saying therapeutic way, but a little bit of, if they have a tantrum, even to grade 2 kid can say that, hey, I know you're tense, you're stressed. Can you come? I'm sure that kid can do it. It's not, I mean, nowadays kids are pretty smart. A grade 2 kid can easily do that. And these are small strategies you can let them do it at school. That way they know what inclusion is. So you're just saying inclusion, autism, these words for them just means words.
Yeah.
They don't understand the meaning of it.
Absolutely.
So you need to get them to do certain things. Now, for example, like typically with my daughter, when she has temper tantrums, her only way of calming her down is just giving her an assurance. Assurance saying that it's okay, you'll be fine. Can we do a breathe in, breathe out? And even for the breathe in, breathe out, they have a very different way of saying, smell the flower, blow the candle. These are small kids' words.
Yes.
It's very easy words. The kids understand that. That way, you're actually promoting inclusion even in the school system by actually making the kids do those strategies
Yes.
to the other neurodivergent kids.
I see what you're getting at. Absolutely. It would be amazing to see a neurotypical kid supporting a neurodivergent kid when the neurodivergent kid needs it. When, as you said, when there's an emotional meltdown or when there's a tantrum, if the neurotypical child, or forget these labels, if another child is able to come and say,
Yes.
breathe in like a flower and then breathe out like you're blowing out a candle.
Yeah.
Then right there is inclusivity in action.
Exactly. Like I've seen, Avinash, that they have these Howl Awards or whatever. I mean, these are this thing what my daughter keeps saying, which means they have these programs in them. I have seen them take them to senior citizen home. I've seen these things happen, which means it's there as a part of a curriculum. So why don't you involve this also as a part of a curriculum? There are a lot of places where you can take these kids where there are specifically like Erin Oaks, or just take them as one of the, tour or something, just to show them how the people work with neurodivergent kid. Or even in your school, you have neurodivergent kid, you have, these confined classroom. Make that as a point that, okay, guys, go and do a little bit of volunteering there. So that is where your inclusion is happening, because you're trying to make the other kids get involved with these kids. And these kids also feel inclusive, and the other kids also understand the meaning of inclusion.
Completely understand. Now, it's not just that we are referring to neurodivergent kid as being, less able to do something, so they need support from a neurotypical kid. It's not that. It goes the other way as well. If a neurotypical kid is struggling to see a bigger picture, or it is struggling to come up with some creative project, then a neurodivergent kid can immediately step in there and then get that done in an instant for the neurotypical kid. So I see that support flowing both ways.
Yes. I think that's where the inclusion will happen, right, Avinash, when you're trying to get these two kids with their strengths come together.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to say when you're saying inclusion. And again, I'm going on mentioning this because when you're saying inclusion, you have all those programs. It's not kind of gelled together right now. The only way you gel it together is, as you rightly pointed, there are certain excellent qualities in neurodivergent kids which some of the neurotypical kids would struggle to do it. Why don't you use those strengths, saying, hey, why don't you do this? He's finding it difficult. There the inclusion again happens.
Yes.
Right? So neurotypical kids don't feel, I mean, what I'm sorry to say this, but I have seen that in some of the scenario, the neurotypical kids find it a little bit superior than these. I've seen that. I mean, this is my personal, I may be wrong, but this is my personal feeling when I see that is where they're standing right now. So that is where the gap is, and that's why the inclusion is not happening.
Yes. So I can draw a straight parallel to my own life experiences based on what you said. When I was working in corporate for about 10, 12 years. And after a certain point of time, I felt that my colleagues had this sort of superior air. Oh, okay. Whenever I would come into the room or walk around, oh, this guy's here. He's what can he do? Kind of thing, right? And I think that's entirely because I was at that time measured against a standard or a scale that they had set up,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I was trying to do the things and fit into boxes, follow the patterns that they had been following, and they were apparently really good at them. But I was not.
Oh,
So then it would suddenly become like, this guy's good for nothing.
so that is.
I wouldn't even say good for nothing. I'd say he's good for only a few things.
Okay.
Right? So you end up getting, people start like instead of appreciating and including me, got a feeling of they are tolerating me.
Oh yeah.
Right? So it's those standards I feel that they hold for us, for me especially. From my experience that this has to be this way and that has to be that way.
Yeah.
Just a very simple example from a corporate work point of view. I know we're talking about kids, but just a small side example so that some parents also might relate to this.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we're expected to go for work at 9 o'clock in the morning and stay there till 5. Have a clear list of priorities that do this. Hold off on a priority while I'm working on something else. Those are all standard expectations, and I could not meet any of them. Like in my working style was completely different, where I would sit to work at 8 o'clock in the evening and complete 4 days worth of work by 1 a.m.
Okay.
So because the work is getting done, but the way it's getting done is just something that they could not digest, could not accept. And I think a lot of the exclusivity started from that one point, right?
Okay.
And that leads me to segue into the education part. You brought up about people being educated, right? Now, if you're talking about education, I think we need to look at the grown-ups here, which is the parents and the school and the thing like that. Because kids will repeat what they see at home and at school.
Yes. Very true.
So where do you think that education could start, and how could someone approach that?
So that's a very good point which you brought up, and whatever you shared about your own experience about how you felt at that time when you were working, and the difficulties what you faced, right? And as you're saying about the education in general, as we know from what the autism, whatever autism or ADHD was there previously as opposed to now, even the numbers, you would see there's a vast difference. There's quite a lot of kids because you have this early intervention where you would want to look for those red flags, which we talked about in the previous episode. So it's just trying to get into the early intervention to get to see if these kids get the therapy so that they fit into the world. Again, I understand that's a wrong approach of saying fitting into the world, but that's how the world. So what I'm trying to say is, when you have so many resources available right now, Avinash, before people had to go to library to look for books, to specifically look for what autism. Now it's a AI world. You have so much of knowledge about what's happening in the world. You would have real numbers on how many of autism diagnoses are there per year. You would have all these knowledge as parents. So my first this thing would for all the parents, for all the parents, for all the kids. I don't want to say neurotypical or neurodivergent. In general, parents in general, there are certain life skills which your kids has to learn. One of the part of the life skill would be them being aware of different kind of people around you and how to deal with these different kind of people and how to be inclusive. You might be superior in certain things, at the same time those kids are also superior, right? So first try and educate your own kids of saying, yeah, some kids might be different from the other, It may not be even neurodivergent. I've seen in general kids being different, having some kind of tantrums, even though they're not neurodivergent also. So as parents, I would say, I mean, I would probably educate even my own kids of all these life skills, which is a very important life skills, which you need to educate them, tell them these are the things. Okay, if the kid doesn't know what an autism is, you have other ways of explaining it. There are a lot of videos available. It's not like you don't have those. In fact, I've shared couple of them with the school as well.
Okay.
There are videos which is very user friendly and kid friendly videos,
Okay.
which shows how a neurodivergent kid is, what an autism is, how they see the world. Everything is there. Everything is there. You have all the data there available. Just educate your kids, educate them of being inclusive. If they don't know, let them come and ask you questions of, oh, I have a kid who's like this, who's a little bit different. Why is he different? That is how they are getting to educate themselves, and they are trying to be inclusive. So it's not the kid who are not trying to be inclusive. It's as parents, you need to encourage them to be inclusive. And that is how it needs to start.
Yes, yes. You brought up a very, very valid point. As a, if for this education thing, where to start? If we look at parents as, okay, my kid is going to school, he is in so and so grade, and he is getting between C's and A's, and I'm not getting any complaints from school, and I'm happy. That's all. So there are a lot of parents that would choose to limit to that much for whatever life situations they have. But I strongly believe that there are many other parents who do consider these other things, that they see that it's not just my kid and my kid's life and my family life that matters.
Yes.
Because we are social beings, and our kids will grow up in a world where they will interact with both neurotypical and neurodivergent people. And there are parents who, would want to educate their children on how to do that.
Yes.
Right? So that being said, I really like what you said about not putting the labels, right? Inclusivity, autism, ADHD, because in my experience, the moment these child starts identifying with these labels, it immediately opens the door for a lot of bullying. You has already
Exactly.
Right? That's where exclusivity starts. Instead, for the parents that are interested in actually teaching these skills to their kids, why don't we look at the symptoms that we are talking about? Just the symptoms, right? So personally, I'm sensitive to sounds and noises.
Yes.
Regular sounds which don't bother people, they irritate the hell out of me. I would really appreciate if somebody knew that, and in other social situations, tried to keep it down. I would appreciate it. So it starts with the symptoms. Now, I'm not labeling the sound sensitivity as autism or ADHD or bipolar or OCD, whatever it is. I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? There might be other kids who are sound sensitive. And, if we start with those symptoms like that.
Yes.
There's another symptom that is very common in this thing, which is the tendency to keep interrupting during a conversation, right? Not knowing when to, the impulsivity. So if we look at things as symptoms, and then those parents who are interested to do better for their kids, if we talk to those parents and say, why don't we talk about how to address these symptoms instead of these labels?
Yes.
It's easier to address the symptoms, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a great starting point.
That's a very good point where you're saying about the sensitivity of sound. I mean, these are typical red flags which we spoke about. But the thing what I would like to tell everyone in general is that your kid is going to school. You as a parent, I mean, your kid may not know, but you as a parent, your kid is going to a class with all kind of kids. So what are these? These are, as I've been telling, these are life skills. What you're going to say, just encourage your kids. Say, oh, why don't you have that conversation with your kid? Oh, who all your are your classmates, and what happened in class? I'm very sure they would probably come up, oh, I have this kid, they say about autism. So that's your segue. that's your segue where you try to talk to them. What is, they might find it different. They might come to you, oh, she's so weird. You need, no, it's not weird. So as a parent, because you are knowledgeable, you should be telling those kids, saying that, no, it's not right. She's different because of this. Maybe she's good at something else. Why don't you explore that? That is where you are putting your this thing of inclusion there as a parent. And of course, the school is going to do their part as well. And as I said, they can include these stuff. When these two happen together, Avinash, I think the inclusion will happen.
Yes.
There are a lot of gaps. And what has happened is, as parents and the social stigma especially, that's the biggest thing over here.
Yes.
Where the social stigma is still not gone. So even with the parents with the autistic or a neurodivergent kid, they don't want to come in the open and admit that. So again, that's a biggest problem, because you're not helping your kid by not coming out with those things.
Yeah.
So again, why you are not coming out? Because the other parents are not.
Look, what will people say? Yes.
So that is where the problem is, right? So the problem here, what we are trying to, help people here, Avinash, by doing this podcast is, we are trying to bridge those gaps. Because you have one set, which is about the knowledge about that. You have different sets. But there is no bridging. Only if the bridging happens, there's inclusion. There is not going to be any issues with, exclusivity, bullying. I mean, all these things would come to a minimum. Because that social stigma of mental health or the social stigma of autism, neurodivergence has to first go.
Yes.
That's the first thing we need to concentrate on, saying that it's okay.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it's okay. It was looked upon as a bad thing, as an unwanted thing. Not anymore. Right.
Yeah. Again, it was looked upon as a bad thing, or knowledge.
Yes.
Because people did not know about that.
Yes.
For them, they did not have means and resources to address it.
Yes.
Like, for example, I would say even diabetes, right? You go a couple of years back, I mean, it was looked as a big stigma because there was no medicine available or medication. Now, for autism or the therapies are available now.
Yes.
So it's just that you got to understand, you need to educate. That's the main thing. And I have been advocating this school in my social circle, saying, please advocate, please educate your kids about autism, neurodivergence, because ultimately you need your kid to be a better person in the society. That's what you're aiming at.
Absolutely. I thought of something else as you were speaking, neurodivergent. So, how about we, for the next few minutes, we make this very specific. You said we're doing this here through this podcast. But let's get a little more specific and address the Southeast Asian population here.
Yes.
Right. Today I got a number. There's 1.8 million of us here.
Oh.
Right. In Canada. I don't know how many of us where we live. Definitely a lot of people, right?
Yes.
And I've also come across this piece of information that says that India is number one in misinformation about mental health and about neurodivergence, and misinformation, misunderstanding, misdiagnosis, mistreatment. Right? They have, I mean, not they, even me, we had it backwards for a long time. And now things are getting clear after I moved to Canada. Yeah. Now, that being said, there's an example I have. I'm not going to take any names, but there are children I have seen who are visibly neurodivergent. Visibly, forget masking, right? You can look at them and look at the actions, the behaviors. Not even subtle, very loud, and it's right there that this kid is neurodivergent. But the parents are not even willing to look at it.
Yes.
Right? They would rather have their child continue to struggle at home and be bullied and insulted at school. I'm saying insulted because kids, as they grow higher, it changes. Right? The talks change to an insult in higher grades.
Very true.
So, how, I mean, I really don't know how we can get more of our Southeast Asian parents to open up about this. The stigma is very, very strong in this population.
That's exactly what I am fighting about, Avinash, is that even I was one among them initially. I used to fight a lot with myself, but then I realized it's not about me, it's about my kid I'm talking about. And I'm okay. Today I'm pretty open. When I go around in my social circle, I say, yes, my daughter is autistic. There's nothing wrong in accepting it because it's not you're talking about. It's your kid you're talking about. And if you're not going to advocate for your own kid, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it?
Yes.
So that's something you need to break the social stigma and be a strong person saying that it's not me we're talking about. It's the kid. So first, replace that by the kid and the kid's interest, and I think automatically that acceptance is going to come in.
Right. So you said that you're separating the stigma is not on me as a parent of an autistic child, but the advocacy or the opening up about this autism is happening because I want to advocate for my child.
Yes. So basically, what as a parent, I mean, any person, I would say, we have this thing that what would, as you said, what would society say? Oh, my kid is like this. What? See, there, when you're saying, oh, my kid is like this, what would the society, you're thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about the kid.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I'm trying to say. Separate yourself from the kid.
Yes.
That is the first step any parent need to take. Separate yourself from the kid and the kid's interest, because now you're there to shadow your kid, but you're not going to be there to shadow your kid forever. If you're not going to do the advocacy today, how is the kid going to advocate for himself? Because he will lack that confidence in him or her to advocate for himself. What I am aiming for, I can personally say, Avinash, is what I'm aiming for right now is, today I'm advocating for my daughter. Tomorrow she's going to advocate for herself.
Yes.
But if you have to give that confidence in her, which means you need to be confident. You need to accept it.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying the first step any neurodivergent parent has to do is separating their ego, their self from the kid.
Yes. Yes, that's you brought an interesting point up. It's this is what I see as happening when a simple piece of information, which is my brain works a little differently, or in other words, my brain works on Linux, right? That's just information. But then, as I've seen a lot of us Southeast Asian parents put so much meaning on that. Oh, this is not normal. That means you're not going to be successful in life. That means you're going to need our support even when we are old, right? It goes into the land of the ridiculous after some point. Yeah. So I fully agree with that.
Yeah. And again, what are you doing there when you're saying that you're not normal, you can't do this? You're actually discouraging your kid. You're not encouraging your kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another thing, right?
Yes.
So when you are not, and again, I have seen in a lot of, I'm just trying to go away from the neurodivergent and in general for mental health, because I just want to, because you brought this topic up about how Southeast Asian, people are not ready to accept mental health. What I'm trying to say is, if you're not able to accept the mental health or any of such this thing, your kid is not going to be open. So which means he's going to suffer from inside. That's not something you would want, right? So you need to be pretty open. You need to get, hey, what happened? Are you facing something? Even with your neurodivergent kid, don't think that your neurodivergent kid doesn't understand. They do understand.
Yeah, a lot, but
they do understand. They can also see the difference. They can also see, why am I being separated? They can actually experience. It's just that they cannot express it through words, but they will express it through their action. What is their action? Temper tantrums.
yes.
So which means you're actually trying to make it worse for them.
Yes.
Because of your non-acceptance, you're making it worse for them.
Yes.
And that's not going to help them at all. In fact.
Absolutely. As a message to the other Southeast Asian parents that are currently living in Canada, it's a lot different from the way it is in India, right? Here we see that even if the children and teachers, they are accepting of a child's neurodivergence, but the parents are not accepting it.
Yeah.
Then the child is going to grow up with the parents' point of view. The child is not going to care about the future, because at least till teenage, parents are like gods for their kids.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
They're just going to repeat what the parents are saying. So I personally feel that, the situation here in Canada is a lot more accepting. It's a lot more open. It's a lot more chilled out compared to what it is in India. Here, there's nobody to really say anything about anything really, because we all have the same struggles, right? We all have the same shortage of time. We don't have the help of maids here. We don't have drivers. We don't have
Yeah.
cooks. All of us are in the same playing field.
Yeah.
So if somebody is a little different and somebody is a little, not different or indifferent in any way, nobody cares in Canada, right?
Yes.
So,
And there are help available, Avinash. You have a lot of help. As I've already spoken in the previous episode, there are a lot of help available. There's a government funding available. There's IEPs, which is the individual education plan for your kids available. But again, if you're not going to help your kid, the system cannot help your kid. Our government cannot help your kid. So you need to first, if you see the red flags, you need to first get them diagnosed. And there's no harm in getting, you're actually helping them out. Getting them diagnosed at an early stage is really helpful for them, because if you're able to get those strategies in place beforehand, moving forward, you need not have to even hold their hand. They will become independent. That's the whole purpose of early intervention. And that is what I'm trying to say, that please look at these red flags, get the diagnosis, get the proper help, and believe me, here you have a lot of help available in the education system, in the government. There's accessibility, there's human rights code, which is actually helping your kid in so many ways. It's just that you as a parent, you need to take the first step.
yes, I'll like to go a little further than that. It's not that these things are there, these provisions and these rules and regulations and all of this is there. This is actually implemented as well.
Yes.
I can give you simple examples. In one of my son's previous classrooms, they had these rocking stools.
Yes,
Right?
I know. Yes.
So I have not seen that in any school in India till now. So just for the benefit of whoever was watching this, the rocking stool is something where the child can sit and keep rocking back and forth safely. So that gives a good stimulation to the mind. Like, it keeps a part of the brain busy in doing that rocking motion, so the child can pay attention to what the teacher is saying.
Yes.
There is action here. There is a lot of provisions here. What is not there is definitely, there's no shame around that,
Yes.
right? Nobody is
That's
going.
true.
Yeah, I have openly come out in social situations and said that I have ADHD and then I have a lot of autistic tendencies as well. Nobody has yet walked up to me.
They don't judge you.
Nobody has judged me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I say. I mean, this is something which I feel, Avinash, is not just confined to Canada or Southeast Asian community. I'd say in general now, because the way science is developing, there are new things which are coming up. These are coming just for you to manage it at an early stage. The whole purpose of an early intervention is to manage it at an early stage, so that when it gets further on in the age, there are other things also happening with your body which might only make it worse. And the whole reason of the early intervention is, when you know to manage it at an early age, you will be able to manage it throughout. That's the whole purpose of it. So I would say it's not just limited to this thing. I would say everyone needs to accept it, and there are therapies available, as I've done my research, there are therapies available everywhere. I mean, of course, in other countries, it might be a bit expensive compared to here. But what I'm trying to say in general is you have resources available, you have therapies available. And as you rightly said, I do understand, even in my daughter's school, they have something called as a sensory room where they have these squishy balls and everything just to calm them down. And you don't see that in Indian schools, right? And and these squishy balls or sensory stuff, it's not just for neurodivergent. There are kids who will be in a situation where they're tensed or they don't know how to express their feeling. There are a lot of other kids, the neurotypical kids, will also have these issue where they cannot express, right? So you have those things available here. So my this thing thought my just to sum it up, is you have everything available, just accept it and be vocal about it. That's the main thing.
Yes, absolutely. I second that. Be vocal about it. We're still on South Asian, right? South Asian parents. Like, if you're serious about your kids doing well in life, consider it. Look very closely, right? Look for information that your child is giving you. All the red flags we've spoken about in the previous podcast, and if necessary, go ahead, do it, get the diagnosis done. You might want to take the medicine or choose not to take the medicine. That's not even what we're talking about. If you know what you're dealing with, it becomes much more easier to deal with it, with or without medication. Forget the medication. So we spoke a bunch about being more inclusive today. Yes. I'm still going back to the point where you said it's a skill that can be learned, and I think it's a skill that is absolutely necessary for everyone. Yes, being more inclusive. I think we touched upon this a little bit last time also, where we said the acceptance part.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Acceptance starts at home. It starts in the family.
Yes.
It starts from the acceptance, and inclusivity starts there.
So it's just the stages of it, right? So that's what we were trying to do. And we are going to, just for the audience to know, that we are going to have, in the next episode, we are going to have one of our therapists come and talk about all the different various therapies available. So you would know what your kid can get. So I think it's high time, parents, that if you are noticing some red flags, please go ahead, get it checked with the professional and start working on it right away rather than waiting until they become.
Yeah. Good. You brought up the therapist. So whoever's listening, the next one is going to be even more amazing than this. This is a qualified professional therapist who works with thousands of kids on a daily basis. Not on a daily basis, who has worked with thousands of kids till now. Who better than her to give us this new knowledge, right? So any one last thing you would like to say to conclude?
Pretty much that, Avinash.
Okay.
And we will we'll keep talking more about this neurodivergence and acceptance of mental health, because this is our way of educating the society, and that's the whole reason we are doing these podcasts, so that you can always, if you have any questions, you can always message us on our Insta handle and X handle. So just, if you please reach out to us, keep watching us for more such podcasts. And as I said, we're going to have a therapist, we're going to have more of such professionals come and talk about various therapies available, and we're probably going to have another a person from PDSB, that's the school board, come and talk about what is available, what kind of programs are available in the school system as well. So we're going to have more and more of it, so please stay tuned.
Yes, that's from the legal expert who's doing advocacy in her way, and from my end, you can expect a lot more of some fun and games. Personally, I have found that improv is a wonderful way for neurodivergent people to be much more healthier, right? I'm seeing now that playing and performing improv It's almost like a necessity to keep those brain circuits functioning well. So you can expect to hear a lot more from me about how improv is really helping me and my family in this situation. Thank you so much for your attention so far. We really enjoy making these episodes for you. I hope you enjoy watching them as well. From all of us,
Yeah.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.